Welcome to Gemara Academy. In this class, we will learn Tosfos Dibur Maschil Ein Mafsikin. Let's begin by looking at the flowchart of the Gemara so we can see what Tosfos is coming to talk about. So here in the Gemara at the very beginning, we presented the Mishnah that taught that there are 5 activities that a person is not permitted to do before davening Tfilas Mincha. The Mishnah continued and said, V'im hischilu ein mafsikin. However, if a person did begin any of these 5 activities before Tfilas Mincha, we do not obligate him to stop, rather we permit him to continue and conclude the activity. So this is the part of the Gemara that Tosfos is coming to talk about and explain. Now let's see a general outline of this class. The Mishnah taught that if a person began any of the various activities that are usher before Tfilas Mincha, he doesn't have to stop. So there's one point at Tosfos, which is, Tosfos will explain and bring 2 proofs that this is only the case if the person will have time to daven afterwards. Only if, after concluding the activity, there will be time to daven afterwards, do we permit the person to continue doing the activity. However, if by continuing and concluding the activity, there won't be time to daven afterwards, we will obligate the person to stop in order to daven. So in other words, what the Mishnah is saying is only that we will not obligate the person to stop out of a concern that he'll forget to daven Tfilas Mincha. Rather, we permit him to continue, and we rely that he will remember to daven Tfilas Mincha, but he still remains obligated to daven Tfilas Mincha. Now let's see Tosfos in the flowchart form. The Mishnah taught that if a person began any of the various activities that are also before Tfilas Mincha, he doesn't have to stop. So Tosfos says, and it's in a purple arrow pointing upwards because it's explaining when this is the din, that this is specifically if there's still time to daven. So that's the entirety of Tosfos, telling us that we only say that the person could continue the activity and we don't obligate him to stop if there is time to daven Tfilas Mincha afterwards. However, if there isn't time to daven Tfilas Mincha afterwards, we will most certainly obligate him to stop in order that he should daven Tfilas Mincha. And now Tosfos brings 2 proofs that this is the case, and it's going to be in light blue arrows pointing upwards. And the first one is from our Gemara later on our Amud. It says, so Tosfos says, like it's indicated in the Gemara that said that by Mincha drunkenness is uncommon. The Gemara later explains that by Ma'ariv, if a person started a meal, if Tfilas Ma'ariv is a chayva, is an obligation, like Tfilas Mincha is, if a person started a meal, we will obligate him to stop. And the Gemara asked, why is it that by Ma'ariv we obligate him to stop and by Mincha we do not? The Gemara explains, because by Ma'ariv, by the supper meal, it's common for a person to be drunk, so we're afraid that he might come to miss Tfilas Ma'ariv. If we permit him to continue the meal, he might become drunk and he won't daven afterwards. But by Mincha, drunkenness is not common, and therefore we're not worried that the person will become drunk and not end up davening Tfilas Mincha. And therefore Tosfos points out that this shows that he isn't permitted to miss out Tfilas Mincha. We expect the person, and he's obligated to daven Mincha afterwards. And since we're not concerned that he'll become drunk and miss Tfilas Mincha, we permit him to eat the meal. So this is the first proof of Tosfos from our Gemara later on this Amud. And the second proof is from the Gemara in Sukkah, which we mentioned previously. And Tosfos says, and in Sukkah he clearly establishes our Mishnah that it's a case where there's still time. The Gemara in Sugya says that our Mishnah is talking about an instance where there's still time to daven, and that's when we say we don't obligate the person to stop. However, if there wouldn't be time to finish to daven Mincha afterwards, we would obligate him to stop. And Tosfos now brings the source from the Gemara in Sukkah, for he answers on the question in the previous Tosfos, here there is time and here there isn't time. In the previous Tosfos, we brought down a question from the Gemara Masechta Sukkah. Now, why is it that if a person's eating a meal, we obligate him to stop for the mitzvah of lulav, but over here we don't obligate the person to stop for mincha? And the Gemara answers, because by lulav it's a case where if he continue the meal, he wouldn't be able to shake lulav afterwards. However, by us it's a case where after concluding the meal, the person still will have time to daven mincha, clearly bringing out that if there wouldn't be time to daven mincha afterwards, we would obligate him to stop. So to summarize, Tosfos points out that only if there's time to daven Tfilas Mincha afterwards do we permit the person to continue doing the activities, and he brings 2 proofs, one from our Gemara and one from the Gemara Masechta Sukkah.